travelers from all over the world dream of visiting a country at least once in their lives, glorified by numerous poets and artists as one of the most beautiful and romantic places in the world, which has preserved the richest culture and centuries-old traditions. We are talking about France, a country that has become a symbol of love, beauty, sophistication, and a unique historical heritage. Don't know what to see in France? Here is the 10 best places to visit in France. Number 10. If you are still wondering what to see in France, immediately go to its capital, because there are so many attractions of Paris that even a partial study of them will not fit into one trip. The symbol of Paris, as you already guessed, has become the main attraction of France, the Eiffel Tower, one of the most visited and recognizable architectural sites in the world. It is now the Eiffel Tower that has gained worldwide fame, but once upon a time, it caused a controversial reaction among Parisians. While city guests admired the monumentality of this structure, many residents, shocked by the size of the tower, were against its presence in the city and more than once demanded that the authorities dismantle this structure. This architectural creation was saved from demolition only thanks to the advent of the era of radio frequency waves, when the Eiffel Tower became an ideal structure for installing radio antennas. Number 9. Louvre, a former fortress, once a palace, and now a museum. All these transformations have been experienced by the Louvre in Paris, which has become the most visited museum, where millions of people from all over the world come every year. The most distant past and present are intertwined here into a single whole in hundreds of thousands of exhibits, of which only 35,000 we can see with our own eyes. The thing is that there is not enough exhibition space to display all these valuables, and many exhibits also require special storage conditions. The history of this popular landmark in France dates back to the 12th century, when King Philip Augustus ordered the construction of a defensive fortress. He made the first significant contribution to the replenishment of the museum's collection, demanding from each conquered nation a kind of ransom in the form of numerous works of art. Number 8. Palace of Versailles. When wondering what to see in France, without hesitation, go to one of the most respectable cities, located 20 kilometers from the capital. After all, here is a luxurious and relatively young palace and park complex, which once served as the residence of French kings and today has also become a famous landmark of France. This is the Palace of Versailles, an outstanding masterpiece in the history of world architecture. The layout of the park of the Palace of Versailles also represents the highest achievement in French park art. Magnificent compositions of gardens and alleys, exquisite greenhouses full of diverse vegetation, picturesque fountains of the Palace of Versailles. All this became a real standard in European architecture in the 18th century. The palace itself, also called the House of the French Kings. The throne hall was used for balls and performances, and the gallery of mirrors became the venue for the most magnificent and luxurious events of the royal court. Number 7. Côte d'Azur, or French Riviera. And a separate category of guests goes to France to soak up the sea beach, enjoy the magnificent views of nature, that is, to relax in the full sense of the word. But they also have something to visit in France. The French Riviera or the Côte d'Azur are ideal places for these purposes. This resort area is famous throughout the world for its beaches, clear azure sea, high-class hotels, restaurants, and a variety of entertainment. The Côte d'Azur is not just a favorite tourist attraction in France and a great holiday destination, but also a land of amazing contrasts. For example, the warm, sunny beaches here contrast with the snow-capped maritime Alps, located just 2 hours away from the coast. This resort area is also a very noisy place where millions of tourists come, but in the small villages located near the cliffs, silence and serenity reign. The climate of the Côte d'Azur is very mild. There is neither scorching heat nor frosty cold here. Vacationers are provided with a lot of entertainment for every taste. Horse lovers will definitely visit the Hippodrome, where horse races are regularly held, and for vacationers with children, there is a large selection of amusement parks, water parks, and zoos. In a word, real freedom for everyone. Number 6. Pont du Gard Aqueduct. Not far from the French city of Inmes, there is an unusual architectural monument, the Pont du Gard, the highest surviving ancient Roman aqueduct. It was built about 2,000 years ago during the period of the rule of the Roman Empire in France. The gigantic structure crosses the Garden River Gorge and has 3 tiers with a total height of 49 meters, while the length of the aqueduct reaches 275 meters. One can only admire how high the skill of the ancient Romans was, but it is known that the main blocks weighing 6 tons were laid in masonry without the use of any mortar. Number 5. Chamonix Mont Blanc. Chamonix Mont Blanc is a valley in the Alps that has become an iconic ski destination. The oldest ski resort, whose history goes back more than 200 years, has become the most important attraction in France for alpine skiing enthusiasts. After all, here you can not only enjoy the unique views of the mountain panorama, but also have a great, and to a certain extent even extreme, time. The history of the valley began in 1741, when 2 Englishmen went here on an expedition and shared their impressions of the trip in periodical publications. Since then, a widespread fascination with the Chamonix Valley began throughout Europe. The resort is located at an altitude of 1,035 meters. But almost all ski slopes are located at an altitude above 2,000 meters, and the highest point, from where the most difficult routes follow, is 3,840 meters above sea level. Over the many years of the existence of Chamonix Mont Blanc, an extensive, very diverse infrastructure has been organized here. The entire valley, 16 kilometers long and covering an area of 3,000 hectares, has prepared slopes along which there are 69 ski runs, divided according to the degree of difficulty into several separate areas. To visit the valley, there is a train and free buses. Number 4. Fontainebleau Palace. When wondering what to see in France, one cannot help but include the Fontainebleau Palace in the list of architectural monuments, one of the largest and most beautiful royal palaces in the country. It is located 50 kilometers southeast of the capital among a vast forest. The structure includes both graceful turrets and squat buildings, so the residence is often compared to wine glasses of different shapes and heights. The name of the palace itself translates as beautiful fountain and comes from the name of the spring from which Napoleon Bonaparte himself once drew strength by drinking a glass of the purest spring water in the morning. The history of the palace began at the beginning of the 12th century when King Louis VII decided to build his residence in these picturesque areas. Initially, the current palace was more reminiscent of a medieval fortress, which was typical for that era. And only in the 16th century, under the reign of King Francis I, the fortress took on the appearance of a real palace. The most famous Italian masters are involved in the construction, who decorate the palace in the style of mannerism. Number 3. Old Town of Carcassonne. In the French province of Languedoc, there is a unique landmark of France, the fortified city of Carcassonne. This ancient city attracts thousands of tourists with its impressive size and rich history. This is a real medieval city, perfectly preserved to this day. As a fortified point, Carcassonne existed in ancient times. It was erected in the 2nd century BC, when there were Gaul settlements on this site. Later, power over it passed to the Romans, Visigoths, Saracens, and Franks. Carcassonne gained world fame only in the 19th century when it was restored by the chief architect Viollet de Duc on the orders of Napoleon III. The whole city is divided into 2 parts, the old and the new city. So, upon arrival at the train station, you find yourself in a new city. Here you can find an information kiosk where you can purchase a city map and ask any questions regarding visiting the attraction. Number 2. Chateau d'If. Being in Marseille and having 2-3 hours of free time at your disposal, you can rest assured that you have something to see in France. After all, 3.5 kilometers from the old port of Marseille, on a small island washed by the sea waters of the Mediterranean Sea, there is a place covered with real legends. This is the Chateau d'If. The phenomenon of its popularity lies in the famous stories of the famous writer Alexandre Dumas, whose characters were prisoners of this castle. While walking through dark interior spaces and narrow staircases, visiting cramped and gloomy cells, a feeling of fear, hopelessness, and the inevitability of fate involuntarily arises. The spirit of anxiety and danger. The menacing and mysterious nature of the castle's strong structures again and again attracts numerous visitors. Of course, first of all, a visit to the castle is of interest to fans of Dumas' works. For everyone who is familiar with his work, a visit to the island. Number 1. Verdon Gorge. France is full of wonders, both man-made and natural. Covering the sights of France briefly, it is impossible to mention only the first, leaving the second without attention. One of the most spectacular natural places is located in the historical region of Provence. This is the Verdon Gorge, the depth of which reaches 700 meters, and one of its most impressive parts is located between two local villages. This is the so-called Grand Canyon of Provence. This place offers the most stunning views, the whiteness of the cliffs. The azure of the Verdon River and vegetation create a panorama of incredible beauty. Fans of active recreation have plenty of places to go for a walk in the surrounding area. There are a number of walking routes. It is suggested that you master a canoe, kayak, or ride part of the way on horseback. History buffs will also find something interesting in Verdun. For example, Natural Prehistoric Museum Grotto de la Bombe.